This bike over my shoulder is the Amflow PL Carbon Pro, but it's also more than that. It's hype personified. When it debuted, the whole industry turned its head to gawk at this newcomer. Sure, the bike looks sharp, but what really made waves was what was under the hood. A brand new motor from Avinox boasting what's reported to be the best power to weight ratio on the market. Just 5.5 pounds, but it cranks out up to 1000 peak watts and up to 120 Newton meters of torque. All of that with an 800 watt hour battery and only 45 pounds of total bike weight. Less weight, more power, it's sort of the holy grail for eMTB riders. But here's the thing about hype. Sure, it builds buzz and gets people talking, but it can also set the bar dangerously high. Sometimes that leads to disappointment, something all sizzle, no steak. But sometimes it leads to a payoff that's even more satisfying when expectations are met. So where does the Amflow's debut land? Let's find out in today's review. Hey e-bikers, I'm Griffin and you are watching Electric Bike Report. We are your go-to source for e-bike testing and analysis. And hey, if you just like shop talk, we've also got our once a week podcast for industry news, Q&A, and much, much more. Make sure you've hit that notification bell to see it all. So before we get into everything Amflow decked out the PL Carbon Pro with, let's talk about the standout takeaways, what really impressed us about this bike. And first up, that Avinox M1 motor that I mentioned earlier, and wow does this thing deliver. It's rated at 250 watts of nominal power, but it cranks out up to 1000 watts peak and 105 Newton meters of torque. There's even an optional boost mode that bumps torque to a whopping 120 Newton meters. The motor is an absolute powerhouse, but it also shines with how well it syncs with your pedaling. It'll give you the juice to sail into jumps or crush brutal climbs with ease. And it also has a finesse and responsive side. You can dial it back for more precision on technical terrain where careful control matters. There are even programmable options for things like initial startup behavior, the motor overrun, and some clever shift-related features too. And that's just scratching the surface. We'll dig deeper into the motor in just a little bit. But the next standout is the weight. The build here is seriously impressive. The geometry hits that sweet spot for an all-around eMTB. It's comfortable, capable, and not overly optimized for just one thing. The carbon frame, handlebar, and wheels all help keep the weight down. Our size large test here came in at just 45 pounds. And let me say that again, 45 pounds. That's creeping into SL eMTB territory, but for comparison, most eMTBs with that much motor power and an 800 watt hour battery weigh in somewhere between 54 pounds. Even with a carbon frame. So this is a big deal, especially for e-bike skeptics who've been turned off by the bulk of most eMTBs. This can really make you a believer. Now, what that lighter weight translates to is a super fun and responsive ride. It's a blast to whip around flowy trails, and even with the motor running conservatively, it's easy to forget you're on an e-bike. But dial it up and you get that poppy, springy feel that just begs to play. And finally, the tech and spec package is just awesome. Aside from a couple of okay but not stellar items, like the stock stem and tires, Amflow has really packed this bike with top shelf components from major industry players. But they didn't stop there. The onboard touchscreen display is sleek and intuitive, and you've even got multiple button control options for running the bike functions. Or you can actually ditch them for a cleaner cockpit while just using the touchscreen display instead. The settings and companion app are also well designed too, with in-depth tuning controls for power, torque, and more. Oh, and the security features, those are plentiful, which is always nice when you're investing in a premium ride. Now let's dive into the spec package and some key measurements. Our test bike was a size large, but Amflow offers 4 sizes total: medium, large, extra large, and XXL. The Pro model comes in just one color, cosmic black, while the lower spec'd non-Pro version is available in silver. The MSRP for the PL Carbon Pro is $10,199 in the US. If you're looking to save a bit, the standard PL Carbon keeps the same frame, motor, and battery, but drops some of the higher end components for a more affordable price of $7,499. Now that's the price today, but check the link down below for up-to-date costs. And now for the sizing on our large test bike. The head tube angle comes in at 64.5 degrees and an effective seat tube angle of 77 degrees. The reach is at 475 mil, while the stack height is at 628. The bottom bracket height is 345.5 millimeters, and it has a chainstay length of 445 on a 1,255 wheelbase. Now it's equipped with a SRAM Eagle drivetrain with the wireless pod shifters. It includes a 34-tooth chainring and a 12-speed 10-to-52-tooth cassette. The XO derailleur is hardwired to the main battery, which gives you the clean performance of cableless shifting without having to worry about keeping a separate battery charged. Hallelujah for that. The cranks are Avinox's own SL model, 155 mil for the medium and large sizes, and 160 on the XL and XXL. Wheels are Avinox's custom HMC30 carbon rims. Both are 29 inches. Up front, you'll find a 2.5-inch Maxxis Assegai, and in the rear, a 2.4-inch Maxxis Dissector. Now the brakes are the Magura MT7s, a 4-piston setup with 203mm rotors for solid modular stopping power. The suspension is all Fox factory. The front gets a Fox 36 fork with 160mm of travel, while the rear features a Float X shock with 150mm. The 4-bar linkage includes a flip chip, which helps preserve geo if you decide to run a mixed wheel setup with a 27.5-inch rear. The seat post is a Fox factory transfer with dropper travel ranging from 125 up to 210, depending on the frame size you choose, and it's topped with an ergon saddle. Up in the cockpit, you're working with Amflow's Enduro carbon handlebar, 800mm wide with a 25mm rise, 5-degree back sweep, and 9-degree upsweep. And then grips are Amflow's own Enduro ones. Now the controls are split between two different remotes. On the left, you get PAS adjustments, walk assist, and access to boost mode. On the right, the secondary remote defaults to toggling the data shown on the 2-inch OLED control display. That remote is customizable though for other functions, or if you prefer a cleaner setup, you can ditch remotes altogether and just use the screen. And speaking of that display, it's cleanly integrated into the top tube. It's a full touchscreen giving you access to tons of settings, more on all that later as well. Now the bike is designed to fit riders from 5'4" up to 6'7", and it supports a maximum payload of 275 pounds. All right, so now that you know what it's packing on the hardware front, let's talk a little more about the motor and battery setup because there's a lot going on under the hood. As I'm recording this, it's been a little over a year since the Avinox motor hit the scene, and it might just be the one we credit for kickstarting the torque wars. Packing 105 Nm of nominal torque into such a compact body is no small feat, and now that 100 Nm mark is becoming the new target across the industry. Meanwhile, Avinox is still leading the charge with a peak output of 1,000 watts, while other big names are largely sticking around the 700s. Now by default, the motor runs at a 750 watt peak here in the States, but most ride modes allow you to unlock the full 1,000 watt peak. Now speed caps at 20 miles per hour in standard class 1 mode, but you can opt into class 3 28 mile per hour settings. Although you have to do this each time you power on the bike as they're helping ensure you're observing trail etiquette if those speeds aren't kosher where you're riding. There are 5 ride modes total: Eco, Trail, Turbo, and Auto mode, and a bonus boost mode. Now Eco is the only one that won't reach 1,000 watts, but all of the others can. And boost mode is limited to 60 seconds of use at a time and cranks the torque up to a wild 120 Newton meters and seems to level up acceleration really across the board. And yeah, boost is bonkers. It's ridiculously fast and a lot of fun, but I wouldn't spam it either. It drains the battery quicker, and its best use case is probably something like an open fire road climb. On technical terrain, I found the standard trail and turbo settings had more than enough punch. Honestly, this is the fastest and most powerful feeling eMTB that I have ridden so far. And that was all true before we actually installed the latest firmware update. You see, one of the beauties of Avinox is they're really quick with updating the software. Now prior to that most recent update, I actually had the bike set to 850 watts, which was the previous optimized max output. But trust me, it ripped even at just that level. But the beauty of this system is in the tailoring. The Avinox motor goes further than most in this department. If you jump into the settings, you'll find controls for torque and power range, overall assistance level, the acceleration, the overrun, which is when you stop pedaling but the motor goes just a bit further, and even the startup behavior and more. Many motors let you tweak some or even most of these things, but Avinox gives you control over all of them. The latest firmware even includes real-time tuning, letting you adjust assistance on the fly using the handlebar controller. It's super handy when exploring new trails and just adjusting on the go. But my 2 cents on these stock settings, I spent the most time dialing in eco and auto to match my preferences where I wanted a bit more power. And once it was set, the motor synced beautifully with my cadence and effort. Trail and turbo felt like similar top-end power, but maybe a bit more control in trail. In fact, this is a first for me as a 235-pound guy. I like the highest levels the most typically, but this is the first time I felt the middle option was plenty. But again, you can make each level your own. Now, by any measure, this is a top-tier drive system with power, precision, and polish that makes it a serious contender against the biggest names in the industry. The construction backs that up too. It's a combination of polymer and metal gears that deliver a high gear ratio in a compact and quiet package where I didn't hear much noise or feedback unless I was hitting boost mode. And another built-in advantage the M1 has is the integrated speed sensor on the rear tire, which pulls 42 data points. Compared to the usual one that you get per revolution of a tire, so you're able to get a smoother and more accurate response. More data, more precision, more awesome. On the battery side, there's a lot to like as well. The 800 watt-hour battery offers great range, which you'll see in our testing. Now, it's not designed to be easily removable or swappable, which personally I am a fan of those systems, but it does help with the clean aesthetics and sleek frame profile for sure. The battery pack uses high energy density cells, allowing for that slim down tube design without sacrificing capacity. Overall, the weight distribution feels really balanced, making the bike feel easy to handle. And the charger is also worth giving a final shout out to. It's a 12 amp 508 watt unit, which is 3 to 4 times faster than most chargers you'll see. You can go from dead to 75% in about 90 minutes, and yes, that comes standard with the bike, which is just a really nice bonus. So the Avinox app is up there with the best I've ever used, and the display is undoubtedly the best I've seen on any e-bike. But let's start things with the app. So this is your go-to hub for customizing motor modes like we mentioned earlier, but beyond tuning, you can also set charge limits for the battery, access advanced ride metrics, use navigation tools, and more. It's also the center of the bike's security features. You can enable password authentication or use a mobile key that automatically unlocks the bike when it detects your phone. There's also theft detection that triggers alarms if the bike is moved, and if you add the optional 4G chip, you'll get alerts even outside of Bluetooth range, plus live GPS tracking to help you recover the bike. The app also lets you sync to Strava, pair heart rate monitors, and view your ride data in detail. It's a powerful tool whether you're an enthusiast or just want a little more control. Now, about the screen, this is next level stuff. It's a 2-inch OLED touchscreen, and at the top is a charge port for phones or action cams. And while it comes with 2 handlebar remotes, you can actually choose some of the functions there. For example, you can use them for micro-tuning the bike's power or even sync them to control a DJI Osmo action cam. That kind of integration is rare. But if you don't think you'll use those buttons, they are sort of optional and you can ditch them altogether since you can do nearly everything right on the screen itself. Adjust assist levels, access metrics, navigate settings, and even control some of the advanced features when at a standstill. So far, I've had no trouble swiping around the screen, even with gloves on. You can easily toggle between metrics or dive deep into motor settings, all without needing your phone on hand. Now, inside the display's settings menu is where you'll find features like SmoothShift. And when enabled, this does 2 things. It allows gear shifts while coasting, just tap the pod shifters and no pedaling actually required. It also reduces motor torque during shifts to help protect the chain and drivetrain from unnecessary stress. So more longevity? Yes, please. You'll even see your current gear displayed on the screen since the system tracks your gearing in real time. It's a very smart and very slick setup. Look, bottom line, this is high-end, enthusiast-grade tech, but it can also be as simple and minimal as you want it to be. Whether you're a set-it-and-forget-it type or someone who likes to tweak every fine detail, this system delivers on both ends. I've talked a lot about how powerful this motor is, but how quickly does it chew through the battery? To find out, we put it through our dedicated eMTB test loop, which includes a mix of green, blue, and black single track. Everyone's power needs will vary, but we run our tests exclusively in the highest power mode to establish a realistic baseline for minimum range. The PL Carbon Pro logged an impressive result, 30.9 miles with 3,093 feet of climbing. That's actually the second longest range we've seen on our eMTB test track overall, and the longest for a full power eMTB, so kudos to Amflow on that one. Now, one quick note though, we noticed that around the 15% battery mark, the power dropped off significantly. The final 2 miles required significantly more effort, and we weren't getting quite the same level of assistance. This was after just one range test and doing all those high power miles straight, so we'll test it more and see if that's a one-off or a reoccurring thing, and update the written review once we know for sure. But still, 31 miles is a lot. Of course, this is all based on max power use. In mixed or more conservative settings, you could stretch that range much farther. But personally, I'm a fan of having my cake and eating it too, and the PL Carbon Pro really delivers on that front. You get the power when you want it, but also the range to go the distance. Okay, here's where the motor really proves its mettle in our hill test. Now for this bike, things played out a little differently than usual. Longtime followers of the channel know we typically run 2 hill tests with our go-to tester, Justin, for consistency. But Justin partied a little too hard on a ride recently and ended up with a concussion. So while he's on the mend, we had Bryce step in and knock out the water tower climb since he's the closest match to Justin in rider weight. The water tower climb is where we test all of our eMTBs. Once Justin's back to full strength, we're going to update the written review with our second test location at Devil's Backbone. So if you're curious how this stacks up across every motor that we've ever tested, stay tuned for that and check the link below. But for now, I'll kick it to Bryce to show you how it performed on the Water Tower Hill. And again, the climb is a dirt trail, 0.86 miles long with an average 5.5% grade and 245 feet of elevation gain.
Okay, we're here on the Water Tower Hill test on the Amflow. This is first little section. It's probably the steeper of the steepest part, and it is flying up this. We're putting in the same power that we always do in these tests. Really curious to see where this comes out. So one thing of note on this test is we're not using the the boost mode for this bike. We're only doing this in turbo. So if you're unaware that the boost mode, if you hold down the upper button for the power for a few seconds, it will give you 30 seconds or a minute, which I think has been updated, of additional power. So you get, instead of 105 newton meters and 850 watts of peak power, it will give 120 newton meters and 1,000 watts. So this test is in the lower regular turbo setting the entire way. And we are hovering right at that 20 mile per hour speed. Okay.
The PL Carbon Pro took no prisoners and went for the kill. This thing rocketed up our test climb, clocking a blistering time of 2 minutes and 47 seconds. That's an average speed of 18.7 miles per hour. Just bonkers fast. And here's why that's so impressive. Our current second fastest bike on this hill logged a 3 minute 13 second finish. The PL Carbon Pro beat that time by 26 seconds. Now maybe you're wondering, does Bryce just ride faster than Justin? And that's a fair question. And to check that, we had Bryce ride one of Justin's previous test bikes as a control, and he came in just 3% faster is all. So even if you adjust for that and trim 5 seconds off the Carbon Pro's time to account for rider difference, it's still a new course record by a very wide margin. And here's the kicker. That trip to the hill test was done before the recent firmware update. At the time, the bike was limited to 850 watts of max power, and we didn't even unlock the full 1000 watt output in boost mode with the 120 Newton meters of torque. So the PL Carbon Pro wasn't even running at full tilt technically, and it still took the crown. So when we're crowning a new king of the hill, it sets a tone. With this much power, there shouldn't be a climb that feels out of reach, at least from a slope perspective. Sure, on super technical terrain, you might want to ease off the gas for more control, but when it comes to brute force climbing, this thing will go up anything you're brave enough to attempt.
Hey everybody, welcome to the ride quality portion of our review for the Amflow PL Carbon bike that we just got in. We've had a chance to put some miles on this and try different things, and man, I tell you what, this bike, it is a riot. It is so fun to ride. But having said that, let's kind of get into what are some of my specific thoughts on the bike with regards to the motor, power, delivery, first of all, and then we'll kind of get into some of the uphill, downhill ride qualities, and then maybe a little bit in talking about who I think the bike might be best suited for. So first of all, let's talk about the motor. This, I know you've seen the specs on this. It is the smallest and lightest weight full power motor on the market, at least for the most part. There may be some other contenders out there, but this system has kind of lit up the eMTB world for about the past year when it was announced. And it will soon be available for sale in the United States, or at least in North America, which is pretty exciting because up until recently it was only in other parts of the world. So you really haven't seen many of these, if any, on trails in the US. There's only a few people that have been able to review them. So we are excited and fortunate to have this chance. So the motor, like I said, super lightweight, I believe 2.5 kilos, and then paired with an 800 watt hour high density lithium ion battery in a size large. Tipped our scales at just around 45 pounds, or just over 45 pounds, which is incredibly impressive. Now, caveat to that is that the bike comes with trail tires, so I mean, you're gonna probably add some weight there, you know, depending on the type of riding you do in terrain and whatnot. As you know, as far as my experience with these tires has been, first ride had a flat. And that's, you know, to be expected. I was ready for that to happen. So but that does contribute to the overall weight and the overall handling and the feel of the bike. The motor itself, I mean, gosh, it's really hard to talk about this motor without talking about how it compares to the new Specialized motor, both the S-Works version and the other one. And it you know, it definitely feels peppier, but there's all kinds of things you can do to adjust the power, both in the app as well as on their touch screen that's on the down tube. But yeah, the motor is amazing. And then one of the things that I found one of the most impressive parts about the motor was not just how well it delivered the power and how much power it delivered, but also this is the quietest motor that we've tested so far. That's something I was not expecting. I thought it would be, you know, maybe similar to the Specialized motor, or even the new Bosch motor, which has gotten a little bit quieter. But it is, you know, on this bike and in my testing, noticeably quieter, which is definitely a, you know, something that I enjoy. There doesn't appear to be any rattling there as far as when you're coasting going downhill, and I don't think I've heard of any other testers that have said that there's any rattle on the bike. You know, there's a couple things here and there, these that do rattle, where, you know, these the cables on the front, there's some rattle there, but again, like, that's just part of the bike, right? So motor and battery system, as far as like 0 to 10 rating, 10. Absolutely the best. And on our range test, it seemed to have a little bit more range than the Levo, as far as, you know, miles per watt hour go. It went a long way. But speaking of our range test, one of the things I noticed is it has a similar tuning to the old Specialized motor, in that when you hit that 15% mark, the power gets dialed back. And then once you hit 10, it's dialed back again. And once you hit 5, it's almost undetectable. So that's one of the things that I didn't love about this system, that I was pleasantly surprised with on the new Specialized motor, is that basically gives you full power all the way to the end, and you can manage your miles accordingly. For me, when I got to the end of that range test, I was really gassed. I was super tired, and essentially felt like I was just pedaling all of it on my own, which I didn't love. I wish I would have been able to just calibrate the miles a little easier. At any rate, doesn't take anything away from the fact that this motor and battery system are top notch in how, you know, 90% of that battery is going to perform. One of the things that I noticed right off the bat, and this has continued throughout my time on the bike, is how maneuverable it is, and that the lighter weight that you get in this bike and system is noticeable. Now, it's both good and bad, and I'll talk about some of the cons to the lighter weight, well, you know, once we get going here a little bit further. But when you're just hopping and popping around on, you know, in normal trails, if you kind of like that playful lightweight feeling, and you know you've missed that, this bike it brings that back. It rides a lot like an SL e-bike, which is something that I don't know that many testers have really talked about, is that if you were to test this bike and then go ride one of the lightweight bikes, it would be the feeling of weight would be very similar. And I know that there's a lot of people that like that. In fact, that's what people have been asking for a long time, and Amflow delivered it as being lightweight or mid-weight with full power and full battery. All right, now speaking about the weight of this bike, one of the things I've noticed is that when you're riding downhill, it just seems to be a little bit, I don't know, just fun and easy to pop up on things. But then when things get a little faster and maybe a little chunkier, And sometimes even on blue trails, it seems to get a little bit skittish. And you know, we haven't been able to test different tires or whatnot, which could be able to help that. But this is really just how the bike feels out of the box. However, when you're in the right terrain, this bike really just feels like a trail bike, like your normal bike that's easy to lift up off the ground, pick up and bunny hop and manual and jump over things. It creates a really unique experience, unlike anything else that we've tested or ridden so far. And that, I mean, that's probably the thing where I just am so enamored that no other bike company has been able to do, to create that lightweight, full power feeling. Now, I'm sure with that, you know, you could absolutely change the spec, get a better fork, get a 38 instead of a 36. Woo! Maybe put a different shock on the back. I know that there's people out there putting a coil or maybe an X2 or a Vivid to change, you know, the characteristics of how the bike rides downhill. But overall, the geometry of this bike is almost exactly the same geometry as the Gen 3 Levo, which, as you guys know, we absolutely loved testing and riding. The difference between that bike and this one is that bike came as a mixed wheel setup. This bike comes with a 29er front and rear. So I mean, there's lots of personal preferences there. As for me, I would, you know, I'm anxious to try this bike with a 27.5 rear wheel. It's got, you know, a setting in the app to change if you do put a 27.5 wheel on, and it also has a flip chip on the rear linkage to adapt the 27.5 rear so that you keep the same geometry. I believe that once you do that, or if you do it, it's not the exact same geometry. It does slacken it out a little bit, which, as far as I'm concerned, would be a welcome thing for this bike. Some people may want it, you know, just like it is. I personally just think there's some things that could be done on this bike to make it a little bit better downhill. Man, just popping and jumping over little hits is just so fun on this bike. Okay, let's talk about some of the components and specs on it. I think it's one of the best spec'd bikes as far as for the price. You get top of the line everything, with the exception of a wireless seat post dropper, which I'm totally fine with, because that means you literally have no batteries to worry about, except for the one internal battery that you charge. And that one battery also it also runs the wireless drivetrain, the X01 SRAM transmission. The brakes they have on this are the Magura's MT7s, which might be my second favorite brake at this point, right behind the SRAM Mavens. These brakes, I think, offer just less bite, initial bite, than the Mavens, which I know some people would really prefer. But they've got great power and excellent modulation. And so for a top spec bike, you know, most brands these days are selling their top spec at you know, upwards of $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, whereas this Amflow top spec is $10,000, just under $10,000. So as far as like the value, I would say like there's, between the system and the motor that is top tier, and the components that you get, you know, you could save money and then still build this bike up if you wanted to switch out the fork. You know, you could grab the Fox 38, throw it on there, sell the 36, grab a different shock, throw it on there, you know, right out of the box, so they're basically brand new, and you can kind of build up a really capable rig. I think personally, if you know, I've thought about this quite a bit, you know, what bike would I buy? And I think the choice is for me between the Gen 4 Levo and this bike. I probably would pick this bike. There's a few things I would definitely change on it, whereas the Levo right out of the box is probably just about perfect for me. But well, the one thing that Amflow did that Specialized didn't was the battery is fixed, so you can't remove it. Saves a lot of weight. It also makes the silhouette of the bike just so stealthy. I mean, it's the best. Couple that with how quiet it is, how well it rides, like you can't go wrong. One of the things I was curious to find out for myself was in other reviews that I had seen, people talked about the frame being a little flexy. And as far as that goes, I don't necessarily agree. I think it's the overall geometry and the suspension that contribute to how the bike feels. You know, these carbon bikes are quite capable. Okay, who do I think the bike is for? If you are a rider that really just wants the best and most capable downhill bike, this probably wouldn't be my first choice. Having said that, like I said before, you could definitely change out some things and change the ride characteristics of it. But that's one of those things where like you buy the bike and then you kind of hope it's going to do what you want it to do, as opposed to just buying the bike that you know is going to do what you want it to do. So I think there's other bikes, better bikes for specific downhill purposes. So however, if you are a rider that enjoys all types of terrain, you like cross country, you like flow trails, you like jumps, and just kind of a little bit of everything, you know, and you want that lighter feeling, lighter handling bike, yet still having the full power, I think this bike's for you. And if you're maybe a buyer that has ridden SL e-bikes in the past, you know, this bike is going to ride really similarly to those bikes. The difference is that now, instead of having, you know, 400 watt hours in your down tube, you've got 800. So what that means, what that means is that you can dial the power back and go forever. Like it's going to be that all-day epic type bike that really doesn't exist in this weight class without additional range extenders, and not just one, like multiple range extenders to get to the amount of range that you'd be able to have on this bike. So yeah, overall we've loved our time testing out this bike. We're super grateful to Amflow for letting us demo this and take it out. For those of you who are curious, we are going to be doing some head-to-head comparisons between this bike and the Levo 4. We're going to try and get a Bosch powered bike in there as well, so you can get an idea of what our thoughts are and impressions on the differences when we ride these, back to back on same test loops in the same day, and kind of break down our thoughts.
Hopefully you enjoyed the sights and sounds of the ride with Bryce. Now let's recap and button up our ride quality impressions. The combination of low weight and high motor power makes this thing an absolute trail champ. It's a blast to whip around and you'll be bunny hopping your heart out all over the place. We're excited to try it out with a mixed wheel setup too, just to see how much more we can push the already impressive maneuverability factor. And this is your classic all-mountain ride, capable of tackling a bit of everything. Now, if you're planning to hit super gnarly downhills or extremely technical terrain, you might want to consider swapping in a burlier fork like the Fox 38, especially if you're a rider on the heavier side. And there were a few times it lost a touch of the planted feel we're used to. But honestly, I'm not sure if I shouldn't attribute that to being so much less weight than we're used to, which can help things seem more planted. I don't want to give any impressions that it's not fully up to snuff though. Honestly, we have no major complaints. The stock suspension is dialed for trail and all mountain use. There's a lot you can do with it, and you'll do it with great comfort and control. And here's the thing, as oxymoronic as it sounds, this might be the cheapest premium bike on the market right now. Just over 10K gets you a build with top tier suspension, SRAM's wireless shifting, and Magura MT7 brakes with all carbon setup. All at a price that's actually pretty reasonable in today's eMTB world, where I wouldn't have been surprised to see another $2,000 on top of that. The only components that didn't quite hit that premium tier were the stem and tires. The stem wasn't our favorite and we swapped it pretty quickly, and the tires are just okay, but those are easy and affordable swaps if you feel like upgrading. All in all, this bike makes a serious case as one of the best values in its class, if not the best. I started this review out talking about hype, and to me, the Amflow PL Carbon Pro is like the next great baseball prodigy. The kind of young prospect that the scouts rave about, saying they've got all the tools to become an all-timer if they keep their head on straight. Well, in this case, Amflow stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park on the first swing. There's still room to grow and refine, more sizes to offer on the bike, color options, spec levels, and a few other things as the brand grows into its own. But as far as debuts go, this one lives up to the hype and then some. The bike feels phenomenal. It's got immense power that'll stretch your grin from ear to ear, but it's also approachable with tuning options that few other systems can rival. You can truly make it ride the way you want it to at such a granular level, not to mention take advantage of so much cool tech. It's playful and energetic, like a puppy that just wants to go. I've ridden plenty of bikes with big power or that are lightweight, but this is one that actually manages to deliver both in a way that feels satisfying. Oh, and despite all that power, battery life is excellent. You can hammer hard on short rides or stretch it out for longer, more epic treks without much worry. That wraps up our review of the PL Carbon Pro. If you've got questions or thoughts, drop them in the comments. We always love hearing from you. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next ride. I'm Griffin Electric Bike Report, and we'll see you on the next one.